Good evening and welcome to Biz RoundUp. I'm Tamiru Nimsat, and we at our television bring you a collection of business highlights. Let's have a look at the headlines. Sri Lanka hosts Forum of Ministers and Environmental Authorities of Asia Pacific. Central Bank warns of a rise in inflation but vows to maintain it at 5%. Sri Lanka assumes chairmanship of the Indian Ocean Rim Association. News in detail. The 5th Forum of Ministers and Environmental Authorities of Asia Pacific, organized by the United Nations Environment Programme, was held in Colombo earlier this month. The forum provided a platform for governments, intergovernmental organizations and other stakeholders to discuss and prioritize environmental issues in the Asia Pacific region.
It aims to contribute to the outcome of the 6th session of the UN Environment Assembly taking place next year in Nairobi. Participants reviewed the progress of UNEA resolutions implementation in the region, as well as the progress made in regional forums and platforms where UNEP is the secretariat. Those include the Asia-Pacific Clean Air Partnership, Asia-Pacific Adaptation Network, Acid Deposition Monitoring Network in East Asia, and the Asia-Pacific Regional Forum on Environment and Health.
Climate Justice Forum is the collective voice of climate vulnerable nations. Shall seek to redress inequitable distribution of environmental burdens to vulnerable groups and economically disadvantaged population and states, from landless farmers to all types of poor and marginalized communities. They all must have access to this finance. The mission of the proposed Biosphere Reserve Bank for the Global South will be to protect and restore the biosphere for future generations by mainstreaming and integrating climate finance with conventional finance on an urgent and hyper-accelerated basis, and promoting both macro and micro-scale climate-friendly investments.
We urge member states to act upon the Asia-Pacific Youth Environment Manifesto 2023, recognizing its significance in guiding our collective efforts towards a greener and more sustainable future. In conclusion, Asia-Pacific's children and youth pledge their unwavering commitment to be catalysts for a sustainable future. We urge governments, international organizations, and stakeholders to heed their voices, integrate their perspectives, and collaborate with the Children and Youth Major Group to build a resilient and thriving planet for both present and future generations.
It is an opportunity for Asia-Pacific region to speak with one voice about the most challenging environmental issues it is facing. This is vital for ensuring those concerns resonate on the global stage.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe said that Sri Lanka plans to reach 70% of its electricity generation through renewable sources in line with the Climate Prosperity Plan by the year 2030. The President said this during his address at the 5th Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia Pacific in Colombo recently.
Humanity is facing an existential threat. The interlinked and cascading effects of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, the triple planetary crisis, are demanding a heavy toll on individuals, communities, and threatening life on our planet. Declines in nature and biodiversity at current trajectory will undermine the progress towards 35 out of 44 targets of the SDG related to poverty, hunger, health, weather, cities, climates, oceans, and land. In terms of change, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change estimates that global warming is likely to reach 1.5% centigrade between 2030 and 2052. Although Sri Lanka's emissions are globally negligible, amounting to merely 0.03%, we in our ambitious NDCs have set targets for 2030 to achieve a 14.5 reduction of GHG emissions, a 70% electricity generation through renewable sources, 32% of forest cover, weaning of coal power by 2042, the net zero 2050 road roadmap for Sri Lanka will be launched at COP28. Sri Lanka is in the process of renewing National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan 2016 to 22 to achieve the objectives of the Kunming-Montreal Global Diversity Framework.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe further said that the current situation of global monetary tightening is an ideal time to put a cap on lending rates of multilateral development banks and the IMF to reduce the burden on borrowing nations.
Numerous global fora have attempted to address the issue of climate change. The Bridgetown Initiative, Paris Pact for People and Planet, and numerous initiatives by the UN Secretary General. The issues and potential solutions have been well articulated at these events. What is missing is the money on the table, leadership, and action. We need a climate justice forum to ensure that the countries least responsible for climate change do not bear a disproportionate share of the loss. We need to raise our collective voice and say, let's get done with this. The developed economies should be held accountable for meeting their net zero targets at least by 2040. If they fail to stay in line with these targets, such countries should be required to compensate the rest of the world. These funds can help with the financing requirements for climate mitigation, adaptation, and climate prosperity of developing nations. Additional volumes of concessionary financing at scale through the MDB is also a crucial requirement. Climate-related investments provide long-term returns which cannot be financed by fragmented, short-term, high-cost private financing. The prevailing situation where global monetary tightening is pushing up market-linked lending rates of MDBs and the IMF is also an opportune moment to consider options of capping such rates or other means to avoid further fiscal burdens on borrowing nations. The Vanuatu resolution has taken the issue of climate change before the International Court of Justice. This is the start of a process of recognizing climate justice as a human right. It is the core of the right to life. All other rights flow from the right to life. Countries unwilling to do their part to stop the climate crisis are guilty of committing genocide.
The members of Board of Governors of ADB expressed willingness to support new projects on digitalization, public transport, education, water and small and medium enterprises development. They said this at a discussion held with Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena on Sri Lanka's project financing requirements over the next 5 years at the Temple Trees on Tuesday. The Board of Governors praised the efforts of the government to provide social security support to vulnerable groups in the society. The Prime Minister briefed them about the steps taken by the government for structural reforms, agricultural growth and relaxation of regulations to attract foreign investments. ADB Team Leader, Executive Director Chantal Wong and Executive Director Sang Ming Ryu briefed the Prime Minister about the ADB's mid-term and long-term projects in Sri Lanka. The ongoing projects cover areas such as strengthening public financial management and governance, foster private sector development, climate and agriculture modernization. ADB Country Director Takafumi Kadano said that ADB Governing Board members would study the progress of projects and inquire into the areas of future projects during the visit. Minister Roshan Ranasinghe, Secretary to the Prime Minister Anura Dissanayake, Private Secretary C. Kurupu and Media Advisor Sugishwara Senadira were present on this occasion. The delegation will also visit project sites to see the progress of the ongoing projects during their visit. Stay tuned. We will return after this short commercial break. Welcome back after the break. Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe said that the inflation path might see an upsurge due to administrative price adjustments reflecting cost recovery pricing. The Central Bank Governor said this while speaking at a press conference held at the Central Bank premises recently.
Cost recovery pricing mechanism, we have seen already last month petrol diesel prices were adjusted and the gas prices also adjusted. And looking at the outlook for petroleum and energy products, I think we see global markets, the price remain high and still there's a talk about going to $100 a barrel. So if that's going to be the case, we can expect further adjustment under the cost recovery pricing formula of the energy and utility prices. If we factor that in, plus in the coming budget, if the government is going to, for the fiscal policy, going to basically broad base the taxes or some tax measures could also have some impact if that happens. So that's why we just want to share with you the inflation path compared to, if you can remember earlier, inflation path was going like further decline, but there could be a turnaround from this month onwards. Just want to share with you in advance. This could be an inflation outcome in next. So, but that is not necessary because of the monetary conditions. It is because of the kind of one-off or some administrative price adjustments reflecting cost recovery pricing.
The central bank governor also said that the central bank is committed to maintain inflation around 5% and inflation outcomes will be closely monitored before the next monetary policy review.
Still, there is a slack in the overall aggregate demand and economies growing below the potential. That's why if inflation target is 5% and current policy rates 10 to 11%, we still see there is a space for us to relax monetary policy further. But depending on the inflation expectations and some short-term changes, we probably will look at it carefully before we make any decision going forward. So that's where in the next monetary review, before that we will closely monitor inflation outcomes. And our commitment obviously to maintain inflation around 5%, we certainly will be able to maintain. On that basis, we will make our monetary policy decisions. So on top of that, other areas we are seeing balance of payment situation improving, fiscal moving in the right direction. So we hope that will continue in the same direction. And also we will make progress on the debt restructuring. DDO already completed. External debt restructuring, we are hoping that we should be able to make a good progress in the near term. With that, I think we have a positive expectation on growth side and ability to maintain inflation and also to bring down interest rates further.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe said that the government is planning to create industry, agriculture and service sectors based on technology with priority given to digitization and green economy. The President said this during his address at the opening ceremony of SLIT campus in Kandy earlier this week.
අපිට අනාගතයක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ අනාගතය තමයි තාක්ෂණය. තාක්ෂණය පදනම් කරගත්ත කර්මාන්ත ක්‍රමයක්. තාක්ෂණය පදනම් කරගත්ත කෘෂිකර්ම ක්‍රමයක්. තාක්ෂණය පදනම් කරගත්ත සේවා ක්‍රමයක්. එතෙන්ටයි අපි ගමන් කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු. මේ ණය ප්‍රතිවගත කිරීමෙන් පස්සේ ආණ්ඩුව ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න යන්නේ අපි ඉදිරි ගමන. පළමුවෙන්ම අපි සීග්‍රයෙන් වර්ධනය වෙන ආර්ථිකයක් ඇති කරන්න ඕනේ. ඉතා තරඟකාරී ආර්ථිකයක් ඇති කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ වැඩ කටයුතු කරන්න අපි පළමුවෙන්ම තාක්ෂණය පදනම් කරගත්ත ආර්ථිකයක් ඇති කරන්න, දෙවනුව ඩිජිටල් ක්‍රමයේ පදනම් කරගත්ත ආර්ථිකයක් ඇති කරන්න, තුන්වෙනුව හරිත ආර්ථිකයක් ඇති කරන්න. ඒකයි මේ හරිත වැඩසටහන් පිළිබඳ ආර්ථිකයේ අපි ලංකාව අද ඒකට ඇතුල් වෙලා ඒ පිළිබඳ වැඩ කොටසක් බාර අරගෙන තියෙනවා. ඉතින් මේ ඇති කරන්න නම් අපිට අලුත් අධ්‍යාපන ක්‍රම ඕනේ. අපිට ඒ දැනුම ඕනේ. අපේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාල වලින් පමණක් ඒක ලබා ගන්නට බෑ. අපේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාල පාරිණික ක්‍රමයට ඇති වෙලා තියෙනවා. අපිට උවමනා සංඛ්‍යාව තාම ඒ ක්‍රමයෙන් ඇති වෙලා නැහැ. ඒ ක්‍රමේ නැති කරන්න උවමනා නැහැ. අපි ඔක්කොම මේ ක්‍රමයෙන් බිහි වුණේ. ඒ ක්‍රමේ නවීකරණය කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒක නවීකරණය කළා අපි ඉදිරියට යන්න ඕනේ. ඒ විශ්වවිද්‍යාල වලට අමතරව අපිට තවත් තාක්ෂණ දැනුම තියෙන උපාධිධාරීන්, ශිල්පීන් බිහි කරන්නට තියෙනවා.
Stay tuned. We will return after this short commercial break. Welcome back after the break. Sri Lanka assumed the chairmanship of the Indian Ocean Rim Association at its 23rd Council of Ministers, which concluded in Colombo on 11th October 2023. Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Sabri chaired the meeting, while his Indian counterpart Dr. S. Jaishankar co-chaired the meeting. The 23rd IORA Council of Ministers was inaugurated with a colourful opening ceremony that brought the Indian Ocean into the conference room via virtual reality. It is significant that the two IORA meetings in Colombo saw the participation of all 23 member states and the 11 dialogue partners. Foreign Minister Ali Sabri said that Sri Lanka appreciates the commitment of members to strengthen the ties that bind the Indian Ocean community. Minister Sabri recalled that Sri Lanka was a part of the Bangdang Conference, which paved the way for the establishment of the non-aligned movement, which Sri Lanka led in 1976. Minister Sabri also recalled the introduction of the historic resolution at the United Nations to declare the Indian Ocean region and its airspace as a zone of peace in 1971. He reiterated the unwavering faith Sri Lanka has placed on multilateralism and diplomacy as a means for the international community to work towards resolving recurrent challenges. The Council of Ministers is the highest decision-making body of IORA, and the ministers are guided by the senior officials who meet as a committee of senior officials. The 23rd IORA Council of Ministers was preceded by the 25th Committee of Senior Officials, chaired by Foreign Secretary Aruni Vijayawardena. The Foreign Secretary reported on the deliberations and work carried out by the senior officials during their two-day meeting to the Council of Ministers. During the 23rd Council of Ministers of IORA, the ministers discussed cooperation on 6 priority areas, namely trade and investment, maritime safety and security, fisheries management, disaster risk management, women's empowerment and blue economy. The ministers adopted the Colombo communique at the conclusion of their meeting as the outcome document. In the communique, the ministers reaffirmed their commitment to the IORA goals and objectives enshrined in the Charter. They pledged support to Sri Lanka to fulfill its mandate to benefit all member states under the theme Strengthening Regional Architecture, Reinforcing Indian Ocean Identity. The ministers also appreciated the offer of Sri Lanka to host a Leaders Summit of IORA next year to reflect on the way forward for the Indian Ocean Rim Association towards and beyond 2030. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is the newest dialogue partner of the IORA, also attended the IORA meetings for the first time at the IORA meetings in Colombo. The visiting ministers made a collective call on President Ranil Wickremesinghe and held bilateral discussions with Foreign Minister Ali Sabri during their stay in Sri Lanka. Minister of Labour and Foreign Employment Manusha Nanayakar said that due to the current predicament, the scheduled departure of the next batch of workers to Israel has been postponed. The minister also said that the Foreign Employment Bureau and the Sri Lankan Embassy in Israel is taking all the necessary precautions to ensure the safety of the Sri Lankan citizens living in Israel.
දැනට ඊශ්‍රායල් රටේ ඉන්න අයගේ ආරක්ෂාව සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඉතාමත්ම කනගාටුදායක. ඒ කියන්නේ ඒ රටට ඇති වෙලා තියෙන තත්ත්වය පිළිබඳ ඉතාමත්ම කනගාටුදායක තත්ත්වයක් අපිට උදා වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. අපි රටක් විදියට අපේ රටේ ඉන්න ශ්‍රමිකයන්ගේ ආරක්ෂාව සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඔවුන්ගේ තොරතුරු ලබා ගැනීමට අපි විශේෂ WhatsApp පණිවිඩ ලබා ගැනීමේ ක්‍රමවේද උදා කරගෙන තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම තානාපති කාර්යාලය විවෘත කරලා තියෙන ඕනෑම අවස්ථාවක උන් සඳහා පැමිණෙන්න යම් ඇතැම් ප්‍රදේශවල තමයි මේ ගැටුම් ඇති වෙන්නේ. අනෙක් ප්‍රදේශවල අයට තමන් කැමති නම් ලංකාවට එන්න අවශ්‍ය පහසුකම් සලසන්නත් අපි කටයුතු සූදානම් කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම ලංකාවෙන් එහෙට යන දැනටත් යන්න තියෙනවා තව අය. ඒ අයව දැනට අපි తాවකාලිකව නතර කරගෙන ඉන්නවා. ඒ අයත් සමග සාකච්ඡා කරගෙන මොකද්ද කරන්න කියලා විදේශ කටයුතු අමාත්‍යාංශය, ඒ වගේම ඊශ්‍රායලයේ තියෙන පීබා ආයතන, ඒ වගේම අපේ තානාපති කාර්යාලය, විදේශ සේවා නියුක්ති කාර්යාංශය කියන ආයතන හතරම සම්බන්ධීකරණය වෙලා මේ දවස්වල මේ වැඩ කටයුතු ක්‍රියාත්මක කරගෙන යනවා. ඉතින් අපේ දෙදෙනෙක් පිළිබඳව අපිට ඉතාමත්ම කනගාටුදායක තොරතුරු ලැබෙමින් පවතින අපේ රස්සාවල් වලට ගියපු අය, විදේශ සේවා නියුක්ති කාර්යාංශය හරහා ගියපු අය, ඒ වගේම නොයෙක් මාර්ගවලින් විවිධ විදිහට ගියපු අය බොහෝ පිරිසක් ඉන්නවා. ඉතින් ඒ අයගේ ආරක්ෂාව සම්බන්ධයෙන් රාජ්‍ය දෙක එකතු වෙලා මැදිහත් වෙනවා. අපි දැනට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා රතුකුරුස සංවිධානයත් සමග සාකච්ඡා කරලා ඔවුන් අපි ඒ සාකච්ඡා දැන් ආරම්භ කරලා තිනවා. රතුකුරුස සමාජයට කතා කරලා ඒ වගේ තැනකට අපේ අයව ඒකරාශී කරගන්න. නමුත් ඊශ්‍රායලයේ පැත්තෙන් අපිට පණිවිඩ ලබා දෙන්නේ දැන් බිය යුතු නැති කාරණාවක් තියෙන. දැන් ඒ පැත්තට ප්‍රහාර එල්ල වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියන එක තමයි ඔවුන් සඳහන් කරන්නේ. ඒක නිසා අපේ අයගේ ආරක්ෂාව සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඔවුන් බොහෝ වෙලාවට අපිට සහතික වෙනව නෑ මෙතනින් එහාට ඒගොල්ලෝ බලා ගන්නවා කියලා. ඉතින් කොහොම වුණත් යුද්ධයකට තමයි මුහුණ දීලා ඉන්නේ.
With that, we wind up for today. For this and more, subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on Facebook. See you tomorrow with State of Business at 7:45 p.m. Take care and good night.